Hi, and welcome to another podcast of Marriage on a Tightrope. I'm Katie.
I'm Alan.
And we're switching roles, but we're still married.
Yay!
Today we have two amazing guests on our show.
And you know what's so shocking? They're married. What a coincidence.
Bret and Rachel Cooper. Thank you for being on Marriage on a Tightrope.
Thank y'all for having us.
Now, Rachel, I got to ask you, do you like to verbally go by Rachel Cooper, or is that like I'm going to put my maiden name in my Facebook profile so people know it's me?
The latter one, yeah. I never understood that comment, the latter. But okay, it's not even my legal name. Rachel Elise Cooper is my middle my legal name.
Yeah.
And so Facebook for Facebook stuff. And it's a good conversation starter for business. Cats. Oh, where did that come from? Are you German? Are you Dutch? Are you Jewish?
Well, and I think it like rolls off the tongue. Rachel Cooper.
It feels very southern as well.
It does. I even want to say it with the southern accent, but I don't.
You have to.
Right? Rachel Cooper.
Oh gosh, that's great. We're already getting.
I turn it on southern accents because I can do it.
Oh, you bring it out, girl. This whole episode. So Bret and Rachel, something cool about them is they are moderators on our Facebook page.
They were the first moderators.
They were, and we're so happy. So thank you for all your work that you've been doing and continue to do for the Facebook group.
It's been great. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, and it's been fun. And Bret's had people reach out to him, and so yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, we want to get to know you guys and let everybody who's listening out there in Tightrope land, Tightropeville, Tightropetopia, to listen to get to know Rachel and Bret. So we've teased a little bit that you're in the South. So where do you guys live? Bret, how about you?
What was the question again?
Oh, did we cut out a little bit?
No,
Where do you guys live?
We're from South Carolina. We live in a small town near the capital. It's called Irmo.
It's even that's southern. Irmo.
And the capital of South Carolina, as we all know, is
Columbia. Not Columbia.
Oh, they were going to say Charleston.
Oh, Charleston?
No. I would never Raleigh. That's North Carolina.
No.
What is it?
Columbia.
We fail.
I think Christopher Columbus.
Right. I don't. But he's out of favor now. People hate him. Anyway, okay. Let's get back to your story. So, we would love to just understand a little bit about where you grew up. Given your accents, I assume not too far off from where you were currently living. We'll see. And
yes, we got southern accents.
If you know Bret and Rachel through Facebook, you know that Rachel talks more than Bret. So we're going to have Bret start. Bret, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? You can sprinkle in kind of the church stuff, but just let us get to know you a little bit and how your upbringing was.
Okay. Well, I was born in Augusta, Georgia, but my family lived in a small town right on the border in South Carolina called Aiken. So it's a small town. I grew up until I was, 3 or 4 and moved down to Florida. And when I was 5, I moved back up to where I'm at now in Irmo. So
okay. So you've
been ever since.
Wow. That's great. That's good. And how many siblings you got?
I got 4 siblings, 2 older brothers, 1 younger brother, and I'm a twin. I have a twin sister.
Oh, very cool. That's great.
So, yeah.
They're not maternal. Twin sisters, they're not maternal.
No, not identical twins. I would.
Not identical. We're fraternal.
That's great. Talk to us a little bit about your upbringing in the church. Whole family born and raised?
Yeah, all family born and raised. Generations on both sides of my family go pretty far back. I think on my dad's side, it goes to, the earliest converts to the church in the South. I think. You probably know my family history better than me. And then on my mom's side, yeah, it goes far back, I think, to the Nauvoo days.
They were pioneers.
A lot of
polygamists too.
Yeah, a lot of my mom's ancestry, they all crossed the plains, and yeah, there's diary records from that. I wish I could give you more details. I'm sure she'd probably, if she listens to this, she'd be very disappointed.
You weren't planning on having the journals ready for a mixed faith marriage.
I know.
That's fine.
So, yeah, a lot of them were European converts. So the earliest missionaries go out to England, and I think I have some Norwegian in me as well. Yeah, they converted, crossed over the ocean, crossed over the plains all the way to Utah. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And so did you grow up in a very traditional home? Tell us about what your family life was like with the church.
Yeah, attend every Sunday.
There you go.
I think every family, the tradition is a tent family home evening every week, for the most part. I mean, I wouldn't say 100% faithful, but you know how it is with most families.
Sure.
Cry.
Yeah, it's always a hurdle every week doing family home evening.
Especially with 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
My mom served many callings. Dad served many callings.
Bishop.
He was bishop. Got released a year ago.
Through the whole faith crisis, he was our bishop.
Yeah.
You live in the same ward as them.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, we'll dig into the faith crisis with you as a bishop, because I could see that going either way. But take us on your kind of your church involvement, Bret, up leading into your marriage. If there's anything worth talking about, we'd love to hear about that.
Well, yeah, I went through the priesthood ranks, deacon, teacher, priest. Served a mission down in Argentina. 2010 to 2012, and I guess that's
good experience. And how did you like your mission?
It was a
can of worms.
It was a whole bunch of ups and a whole bunch of downs. How about that?
Oh wow! We're going to be positive.
The highs and lowest of the lows is the phrases.
2 ups and then we'll go 1 down.
1 down.
2 ups. Well, now you're putting me on the spot again. Let me think here.
We can edit out any silence. It's all good.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me think here.
I know you're down.
What?
I know you're down.
Well, which down is that?
Well, you have to come up with your own down.
Whatever stands out, you can share.
It's been really nice recently. Like, Bret has never talked about his mission until like almost the past 3 months, and he started really digging into he's only talked about some of like the highlights and just nothing super major, nothing even super negative. And then here recently he's really delved into a lot of the pain that's probably been residual that led to a faith crisis. And so it's been really it's been eye-opening for me, but I'm sure it's been therapeutic for him to be able to finally get that off of his chest.
Sure.
All these years.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I could say pretty much the beginnings of my faith crisis started on mission. Yeah, some of the highs I could think about was we had this investigator who was he had a work accident injury, and he was paralyzed from the waist down, and we found him just by knocking doors and stuff. A little bit later on, after a couple lessons, I took the ward mission leader out there and taught him. And that morning we had read over, kind of practice sort of an FHE lesson that we're going to do for another family. But we go into his house, and I felt like the scriptures that we prepared for would work perfectly for this guy. His name was Martin. And I can't remember the exact passage. I think it was in Helaman, but basically it was we pulled out the scriptures and we're reading through it, and at one point the passage said something like through Christ all things are possible. And I remember looking at Martine, and I said, what's the one thing that you desire most in life? And he said, I wish to be able to walk again. And I remember telling him, well, through Christ, all things are possible. And I promise you, Martine, you will walk again. And just the Spirit was so strong in that lesson. And he broke down crying. Well, we all broke down crying. It was just a beautiful moment. And, I still look back on that and, get chill bumps thinking about it. It was a beautiful moment. And so I really left a good impression on him. I don't think I really saw him much after that. He was difficult to find, but he happened to be, there that one time, and I happened to be prepared for it. So,
well, we'll assume that he's out and about walking around Argentina somewhere, right?
Yeah,
he's walking. He's playing soccer.
Well, I hope that as a Christian, many believe, through Christ you'll be saved. And I hope that he can take from that belief the idea that not only is he going to be saved, but he'll be able to walk again, whether in this life or the next. That's still some hope for him.
Right.
Yeah,
that's great.
I love that. So you went on the mission. You have mixed feelings about how it went, and you come home, and maybe we should go to Rachel. Rachel, do you want to? Let's talk to you about your upbringing, how you grew up and everything, and then we'll go until you guys meet, and then we can talk about that.
Okay. It has to do with the sexy pirate.
This is about PG-13.
It's a teaser. Keep listening to the sexy pirate. Okay, go ahead, Rachel.
So I am from Blythewood, South Carolina, and that's not usually how we say it. It's more like Blythewood.
Blythewood.
You gotta pull it out, And it really is. It was a one-stoplight town until maybe 10, 15 years ago, and now it's not. It's definitely gotten bigger. But I'm from Blythewood, South Carolina, which is about 45 minutes from where we live now. My family has been in Blythewood since like the 1700s.
Wow.
So I'm a Southerner through and through. My mom, just going off, kind of flowing through, my mom is a lifetime member, and her family were among the first to build the church in our area in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And actually my grandpa's brother was the first bishop in Ridgeway, which is where our ward was growing up. So the church history for our area all revolves around the Branham family and my family, and it's pretty awesome how enriched it was, and how different it is hearing about like the Utah stories versus like the Southern stories, because there was a good many, like the church burned down, and there was a lot of persecution in the South to be Mormon, and there still is. My mom was raised in a very traditional home. Her dad was a contractor and a builder, and they went on a church building mission. And so they went and built churches around the country. And so that was really cool. And our oldest son is named after him, my mom's grandpa, my mom's dad. So my dad, that's kind of where the interesting story comes in. My dad is actually a convert. He converted when he was in the Air Force, and he drove this like really, really cool van with flames on it, shag carpeting in the back, full bar in the back of the van. Like, he was all out. And his family could not understand when he joined the church, and he destroyed that van and he got rid of it and started over. They just could not understand, because his mom was raised Catholic. My dad was born in Holland, and so they're all from over there. So my grandma was born Catholic and raised Catholic. My grandpa was Jewish and was a Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And he was raised, so my dad was raised Lutheran, because who better to teach the Old Testament to the Lutherans than the Jewish guy? So my grandpa taught Sunday school at the Lutheran church. And then Daddy converted to Mormonism. I think when he was 21, somewhere around in there. and so my dad was stationed at Shaw. He met my mom at a church dance, and there's them. And so it was, growing up, I don't think we were, I've never heard the term Orthodox as much as I have now.
Right.
But I don't think we were super, super Orthodox in the sense that, I don't know. I think my dad growing up the way that he grew up allowed him a little bit more nuance than not, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I was in Young Women, and I've served a lot of callings as well. And
is there anything that your dad did that you felt kind of set you apart from other like Orthodox Mormons, or did you just not notice anything was different?
Well, I don't really censor myself a lot lately, but, and I hope my mom doesn't get offended for me coming out, but my dad was not necessarily, like, I've made my dad a saint all of these years, and I guess through the faith crisis and everything, it's finally allowed me to admit how my childhood actually was. And so my dad was not the nicest guy, and he was super nice, but not necessarily always nice at home. And so, and it was his upbringing, my being anyone that comes from a European descent, like direct European descent, knows how strict that kind of lifestyle is. And so my dad kind of brought it into our house. And so when he got angry, he had to take it out on somebody. And so it was, I think maybe that's where the nuance came in. It wasn't always super Christ-like in the house. My dad was the first one to let me watch The Patriot.
Good movie.
Best movie. And it's rated R. So my dad had his collection of R-rated movies, and that was a pretty big one. We never really censored our language as much. So there was definitely a lot of colorful language in our house. But yeah, I mean, but Daddy was still, he served as a state clerk, and he served in the High Council, and so he's still a good guy.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you can cut some of that out if you want.
No, it's all good.
All right, so take us up to the point now. You're back from your mission, Bret.
I want to know how you met.
And I want to hear about the pirate. So why don't you go ahead and
the pirate.
Why don't you talk about that?
I'll do a blurb about the pirate, and then he can take over.
Okay.
So he got home in January of 2012.
Yeah, but I did a semester at BYU.
He did a semester at BYU-I, and he came back, and he was crushing on this girl who dressed him up like Hook from Once Upon a Time.
It was
totally
her suggestion.
Hooked.
I never.
Hair.
He's totally hooked.
Yeah. For those of you that can't see Bret, he looks like he could be a
thick, luscious beard.
Yeah, that's right. He could be a pirate.
A little bit longer right now, but if I had it short like the guy from Once Upon a Time, apparently I look like him.
So she did him up with eyeliner and everything. And so I was eyeing him, and he asked me to dance. It was a YSA dance, Halloween, obviously. And so he had come back, I guess, from that semester, and he was about to start at USC. And so he was there, and I tried all I could to get him to talk to me. And after we danced and all this stuff, but he was too crushing on the other girl. So it wasn't time. So I went and dated another guy in between that time. And then a few months later, we all had the same friends, YSA Ward. I've heard rumors that they want to get rid of it, but it totally works. We met in the YSA Ward, yes. And we all had similar friends, and he was dating another girl.
And you were still dating?
No, by the time you were ready to break up with her, I was already done with him. Well, he was done with me, if you want to be.
Yeah.
But, So one night there was some, his friend was in town. His friend lives in St. George, and he was in town, and I knew that if I told his friend that I liked him, that it would get back to Bret somehow. I'm not the most shy person, but I wanted it to be a little subtle at least. So, and I'm pretty forward. So I whispered to him and one other guy, and I was like, y'all tell Bret I like him, okay? And that's kind of how it went down. And then from then on out, that was at a movie night, and it all happened that same night. And his arm ended up around me. We were watching Pirates of the Caribbean. More pirates.
Oh, again with the pirates. Please tell me you had a pirate-themed wedding.
We had a Mormon-themed wedding.
Okay.
So the movie night went on, and then we had a bowling night, and then finally he caught on that I actually liked him, and he asked me out on a date. And he planned this whole scavenger hunt all around Columbia, and it was 100 degrees outside. It was in August.
But we still did it and had fun. And you know it.
And I was wearing the wrong shirt, so I had a big sweat mark on my armpit. The best thing you could have gone on a first date was wear the right shirt that it shows sweat all the way down to your hips. Gotta love the South. Gotta love the South.
So what year were you married then?
2013.
2013.
Right at the end.
It was really cool. We, that same year, so we had our first date, and then, I started at my job that I'm at now, and then I started dating him. And so it all kind of, our futures together all started in August of 2013.
And tell us, Rachel, what do you do? And Bret, what do you do?
Well, I wanted to say, we got married December 27th, 2 days after Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
And my birthday is December 30th.
So did your parents
one trip?
Were they like, oh man, December weddings are hard.
Christmas, anniversary, and birthday within 5 days of each other. Yay! That was great. That was my idea. I thought we needed to get married pretty quick. We dated for 3 months before we got engaged, and we're married in 2 months. So I had the dress before I even had a ring on my finger. Yep, I was ready.
I proposed to her without a ring.
Yep. Oh, the proposal. Yeah, the proposal. Okay, so I had this really spiritual experience. My dad died in 2009. And so I had this really spiritual experience about his decision to actually, I felt that it was his decision to actually die. To make a sacrifice for me to be able to come back to the church. In 2009, I was bad. I was really bad. I have a very rebellious spirit by nature. And so 2009 was a really bad year. I was in a really bad car accident, and that I should have died. And then my brother came home from his mission, and then my dad died. So there was a lot going on. And so I journaled a lot. And so I journaled about this experience, this vision that I had of my dad, and I'd never shared it with Bret, so I figured it was Halloween as well. There's a lot of Halloween stuff. So there was a Halloween party going on at my home ward in Ridgeway, and so my dad is buried within a few minutes of the church. So let's go to the graveyard and let's go to the cemetery and sit down on a blanket, and I'll read you my experience that I had. Oh my gosh, that's still probably one of the most spiritual experiences I've had, was reading that journal entry to Bret. And then our foreheads, we were sitting crisscross applesauce Indian style on the ground facing each other, and our foreheads were touching. And then he said,
I said, Rachel Elise Katz, would you marry me?
And it was so sweet.
Wait, so did you have the ring, or was it just spur of the moment?
It was spur of the moment.
Wow.
I was just as surprised as her. It just felt right. It was a spiritual experience. We were connecting, and I felt like I had felt this previously, that Rachel was someone that could be my wife. And when we were sitting down there and she was sharing this with me, I felt, she's going to be my wife.
She's a good one.
And then I asked her, and then I realized, oh man, I don't have a ring. It was after that, I was like, oh man, we don't have a ring.
And remember, we were going to a ward social right after that, and so we had said we're not going to really tell anybody until we have the ring. And I'm geeking out because I'm engaged now, and we're going to talk to my family, because when I say family ward, I'm related to like 80% of the people in this world. So I went straight to my mom, and I'm like, guess what? And I tell her, and she pulls up my hand, and she's like, where's the ring? I'm like,
that's the type
I don't
of
have
mom
it.
she is.
I don't have it yet, but it's gonna happen. And we had just gone through this with another guy where we were planning on getting married and all this stuff, and it didn't happen. And she was like, so she had kind of deflated the whole engagement experience. I was like, no, it's actually happening, and I'm gonna go buy a dress this week. And I was for real. I was gonna go buy a dress that week, and I did. I went and bought a dress before I had a ring. Picked out all my bridesmaids, told them what to wear, announced it. Everything was fine. And then when we announced it on Facebook, it was like, we're getting married in 42 days.
Wow.
Yeah, it escalated quickly.
How many kiddos you guys have?
We have 2 boys. One is 4. He just celebrated his birthday Saturday. Mm-hmm. And then the other is 2, and he celebrated his birthday about a month ago.
Yep.
That's great.
We just went to Disney World celebrating Buddy's birthday.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like the best birthday ever.
It was great.
Mm-hmm. And since it was just us and, the boys, we went at their pace.
Yeah.
Except for the morning. We still got up for rope drop.
Gotta do the rope drop. That's how you get all the rides in at the beginning.
It's true.
Well, if you do the extra magic hours, you have to be at the bus stop an hour and 15 minutes early. So not only did we get to Magic Kingdom at 7, we had to be at the bus stop at 5:45.
Oh man, that is true love of Disney. Alan
was okay. He was awake for it. He said Disney World.
Oh, it's so neat. Well, Bret, why don't you take us through a little bit? You teased at some of the things like about your mission and how your faith crisis really just there were a few things there that started it, and then why don't you take us through some of those things and then to where you start digging in. So, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I go on mission. Well, no, I'm not sure if I would say educatis. Let me think. It's like in the MTC, they teach you mission's going to be a certain way. You go, mission work's going to be a certain way. As long as you're obedient, you're going to see success. You can baptize as many as you want. I remember hearing that. Going into the mission, our mission president was very strong into things like knocking doors, basically. We call them contacts. Alan, if you've knocked doors on your mission yet.
Katie went too.
Oh, yeah, y'all both met on mission, right?
We both knocked doors.
Yeah.
Knocking doors isn't that fun, right?
Knocking wasn't as big as street contacts, but yes, we feel it.
Knocking doors, street contacts, it's all, counted together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's kind of monotonous, and I feel like it's a kind of a time filler. Anyway, yeah, it's very difficult. And, I'm kind of an introverted person, so, going and knocking doors and talking to strangers is difficult to begin with. But then doing it in another language is even harder. So, yeah, I go into the mission field, and my trainer, he's a great guy, super intelligent, read all these church history books, just very well-versed in church history. I think he's from St. George, or a small town from St. George, close by. And he would listen to podcasts to kind of like, I don't know, break the monotony of the mission. I could tell that, he was closer to the end of his mission, and he was, breaking the rules, listening to podcasts. And they were Mormon-themed podcasts, and they were from all these different types. I couldn't name you half the ones that he listened to, but one of them was a guy that was interviewing a historian that got excommunicated. And the historian's name stuck out, and I didn't know what a podcast was until after the mission, but it was Mormon stories. And it was John DeLynn interviewing John DeLynn interviewing
Michael Quinn?
No, September 6th.
Paul Toscano?
Yes, Paul Toscano.
Yeah.
Originally, it was Paul Toscano's name that stuck out. I thought it was Paul Toscano's podcast. It's actually John Delaney's. But yeah, they talked about certain things that were difficult in a way that was so matter of fact and so out of my understanding of the church. It was a little bit jarring. Like, an easy one would be like the seer stone, for example. They just talked about, and Joseph, translated the Book of Mormon with seer stone. And it's like, wait, what? Like, I had never heard anything about that. And asking my trainer that, he goes, oh, yeah, I knew that. And I'm like, well, nobody told me. How come nobody's told me? It never says it anywhere in Preach My Gospel. Anyway, that wasn't a shelf item. It was just more of introducing me to the idea of church history, and there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And it was the beginnings of, oh, wow, I really don't know a lot of my own church. And really, it gave me a thirst to study church history. It gave me a drive for it. The things that he talked about on it, I really liked listening to and just thinking it over and just digesting on it. And I wanted more. And I felt like on the mission, you're so isolated from a lot of outside information. You're given, the mission library and pamphlets, and you can get on to LDS.org, but there's just not much resources to really dig into, the church that you're serving 24/7, basically. So yeah, that was with my trainer. A little bit later on, I met with another, I was paired with another missionary. He had very similar mentality as me. He was very interested in just talking about doctrinal things in a very candid way. We just really clicked together. Like we could talk about anything and not fear judgments, from whatever idea we had. If we postulated some sort of, idea, hypothesis on doctrine, I wouldn't worry about him being like, well, that's silly, elder, don't talk about that. No, he was just very open and very understanding, and we really clicked together. And so at one point we noticed, in D&C, it would reference History of the Church by B.H. Roberts. And so we're like, you know what, let's go print this off. And so we found a text file of all 7 volumes of History of the Church
on the mission.
On the mission, and we printed it out. And yeah, the store owner wasn't happy that we were printing 300 pages of I think we paid a little bit for that. But yeah, so we'd sit down and our comp study time was reading through History of the Church and just highlighting things and just, man, I never knew about this. And, oh yeah, well, what about this over here? And yeah, it was really fun. I really enjoyed that time with him.
That
was kind of
unique because most missionaries don't have they just don't have, well, I think it more so now they have the opportunity to do so because there's just media. But back when we were serving, I mean, we didn't have podcasts or iPods or
podcasts were
we're
oldies. We're
very strange. Well, I'll tell you this: my trainer was the only one that listened to podcasts, and no other companion did I have that would listen to podcasts. Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting seeing that in the information age, I read in the scriptures, oh, it's citing this source. Oh, let me go check out that source, and bam, a quick Google search, and I can find the whole text document of the entire book, and I can print that out.
Right. So you get you get married, things are plugging along, you have a few things on your mission, but what's the next step? When does the crisis hit during the marriage?
I don't know. I think that there isn't a definitive moment where I could say this is where the crisis happened. It was more like a progression. So reading through History of the Church, things would come up, and they didn't seem they didn't seem to jive with what I was being taught at church or what I was teaching as a missionary, really. So it would be like, they would have meetings where they'd have the gift of tongues happen, but it was an evangelical style of gift of tongues.
Right.
Where, as far as I could tell from the document, it looks like they're rambling, and it's okay because there's a translator, because that's what the Bible says, as long as there's a translator. But I was taught that the gift of tongues was preaching the gospel in another language. So those kinds of things where they wouldn't jive together. What the early church was like versus what I was being taught to teach about the church and teach about the early church in terms of, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and, the early apostles, that kind of thing. And things were very different. And so when I left the mission, I got to BYU, Idaho, and being the studious person that I am, I
went to the library.
Oh no, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I still remember the section of the library, and they have a whole treasure trove. I'm sure that no other library is like this in the world, except maybe BYU's, Provost, and maybe BYU Hawaii. But yeah, they have all these, church documents and meeting minutes and journals and all these different books on church history. And yeah, I would just read through them. I can't remember when I started listening to Mormon stories, but somehow I got onto Fair Mormon, and it was one of those things where it's like, okay, let me fact check with Fair, and then let me fact check Fair with the documents, like Wilford Woodruff's journal, whatever it is that they're citing, and go back and forth like that. And eventually from Fair, I found out about Mormon Think and kind of contrasted the two back and forth, because apparently it looks like that they've gone back and forth with discussions. Arguments is probably a better word for it.
Right.
Doing their points. But yeah, that's over the course of BYU, Idaho, and then at the end of the semester, I realized I got to get out of BYU, Idaho, because all this new information that I've been learning is really taking a toll on me. Like, it was getting difficult to go to church, and I knew that church attendance at BYU, Idaho is required, basically. Ecclesiastical endorsement, the participation in FHE and all those extracurricular church activities, all required for me to go to school. And I realized that I might be heading down a path where I might be locking myself into a terrible situation. So I did transfer out of BYU, Idaho, back to University of South Carolina. We call it USC here. So if you hear us call it USC, that's South Carolina.
We're the original, 1801.
That's great.
And that was, I don't know, June of 2013, right around there. Started out the semester, and we started dating right around then. And yeah.
Did your family have any concerns about your transferring back so soon? Were you open with them about it?
Well, I'll tell you this. I went back to BYU, Idaho. I went to BYU, Idaho before the mission. I was excited. I enjoyed it. I tell everybody, it was great for me. I did enjoy it a lot. I made a lot of friends. And it was a good atmosphere to get introduced to college life and for mission prep. It really was. After the mission, I wasn't excited to go back to BYU, Idaho.
Right.
It was like, man, I've been doing this for 2 years, and now I got to go back and do this some more. I don't know. It's just, it felt dragging. And so I think going into BYU, Idaho the second time after the mission, with that mentality kind of set me up for having a more difficult time. I guess that's, you should probably be more positive when you go to, school, especially across country like that. But I was originally looking to get out, but as I progressed through the semester, I started realizing, I really got to get out.
Plus your future wife wasn't there.
I know. I mean, there was nobody there. It's like a desert. No girls out there.
So at what point in the marriage did you maybe Rachel, you can ask this. At what point did Bret come to you and say, there's some problems here? Or did you know all along that his belief or thoughts about the church were different than your standard orthodoxy?
No, I had no idea, actually. Like, even him saying he read I don't even know if I knew that he read the what'd you say?
History of the Church?
History of the Church. I don't think I knew that. But anyway, yeah, no, I think there was some sort of talk or something that was given about family home evening and that we needed to do better. We needed to do better. So I needed to have a talk with him. Buddy was 6 months old, I think. So that would have been winter of 2016, I think. Does that sound right? 16? I think that sounds right. So 2016. So beginning of 2016. We were standing in the kitchen together. Buddy was in bed or something. And because I remember it vividly. And I was like, we need to do better. And it was just a lashing, because I remember saying, you're the priesthood holder and you need to do better and you need to take the reins and you need to do better at getting us to do family home evening and saying family prayer, because we've never been good at that at all. But you need to do better. And then, like, I was hugging him, or we were close enough to where I could literally hear his heart beating. Like, his heart rate was so fast. And that's when he said that, I think you just said that you had doubts about the church. I don't even think you said the church isn't true or anything like that. I think you just said doubts. Oh my gosh, my dad came out of me. I was so angry, and we had just started having conversations about having a second child, and it was really bad. Like, it got to the point where I basically said, I don't think we need to try for another kid. And then I stormed out of the house and I called our stake president. So the stake president is basically like a second dad to me. And so I called the stake president and I told him what was happening. And he said, why don't you go back inside, talk to Bret, and have him give me a call. And so that started a bi-weekly meeting with Bret and the stake president.
Bi-weekly. Wow, that's a lot.
Like, you need to do better, Bret.
Well, I think, it started off Sunday and then Wednesday, which was Institute Day, and eventually became just once a week. And this only lasted for 2.5, 3 months. But I would meet with the stake president fairly
That's a long time.
Talk to him about it.
And basically by the end he said, we're not going to.
Well, he kind of said at the beginning, he's like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like, we sat down and he's like, Rachel told me about your situation. And I'm just here to tell you there's nothing I can do, but let's talk about it. He was a very understanding guy. He's a great person. I never thought anything less of him. I think maybe at the time it was a good thing for me to talk to him because I felt like there was nobody for me to talk to. Mm-hmm. I tried talking to my wife and she stormed out of the house, so that's not a safe space for me. So talking with the stake presidents was refreshing. It was nice to actually hear someone listen to my concerns and actually hear the concerns instead of deflecting or blocking it out, so I don't even get the chance to express my concerns.
And that's one thing, I think a lot of people need to understand about the faith crisis is that or when people leave the church. I was on the attack mode yesterday on Facebook. Katie, this is probably why you're not on Facebook, but I was in this LDS mom group and someone had asked about why people leave the church. And so of course you get people are lazy. They don't want to live the standards. They're too sensitive. They get offended. Satan's all up in them. And I was on the attack. I was just going off and on. But this is good. This is a good insight into the faith crisis in that Bret tried. Bret tried for a long time. It's not like he woke up one day and said, nope, church isn't true. it didn't happen like that. It was a slow burn, and it wasn't, it's like boiling the frog. You can't put a frog into a boiling pot of water. You have to, you start out slow and you work your way up. And that's kind of how Bret's crisis was. And so, that's one thing for the believing spouse to remember as well, is that it's good to know that it's not just about Satan. It's not just about your spouse being lazy, because for most people that end up going through a faith crisis, especially because of church history, it starts out just by inquiries, and there's a lot of research that hours and hours. I mean, Alan, you did that, hours and hours a day, just searching and reading and trying to understand, and actually trying to support your testimony that you've had your whole life, and it just goes a different direction. And I think that's another thing, we have to realize that everybody has their own journey, and we can't blame them for it. We can't blame them for it. And that took me a good long while to understand. I mean, I had kind of accepted that, Satan had gotten a hold of Bret, and that he needed to have this like life-shattering experience. Like, I needed to get cancer, or I needed to get in a really bad car accident and just knock some sense into him.
I want to say that, after I told her that I doubted in the church. And there was a period of time, probably a year, maybe 18 months after that point, where we just wouldn't talk. And then it would explode into an argument just out of nowhere almost. And usually it would build up in me, so that then something she says or something would trigger it, and it'd explode into an argument. And I remember some of those arguments where she was like, you know what you need? You need to have a car accident, or you need to have this, and like that's gonna show you, God's out there watching you. And I'm like, no, this is not what I need to hear right now, Rachel. This is not helpful.
So Rachel
had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, this was difficult.
So Rachel, though, like Bret has the stake president. He's to meeting with it every couple times a week, and you have who? Like who have you told anyone?
For the longest time, no. I think this is a lot of people that go through this is they feel like it's their husband or their wife's secret, right? It's their secret. You can't tell anybody. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't keep it to myself. And so my mom is like my best friend. Like, we're like super tight, and I never thought we would get here where we are. But my mom is like my best friend, and she's been probably the best voice that I've had through this. And she's been super supportive. I think I've said it multiple times. I know we don't say the traditional marriage vows, but I mean, I kind of internalized them and accepted them myself. So when, Mama would say, she would say it almost every time I talked to her, just remember, for better or worse, for better or worse. And that would just, anytime we would get in one of those arguments and it was cool down time, somehow Mama's voice was in the back of my head saying, for better or worse, for better or worse. And I don't know, it's just, that simple thing kind of just kept me going.
So you didn't have a parent that tried to pull you out. She didn't say like, oh, you need to get out of that situation. He is no longer
Mama likes Bret more than me, okay? So no, she didn't say that. It got a little more difficult when we talked to Bret's family. And so Bret didn't even know I was really even opening up to my mom, really. And then one day, I decided that it was time that I talked to his mom. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
So did you tell Bret that you were going to talk to her? No, you just decided on your own to go talk to her.
I don't think so. I think I just decided to tell her. I didn't really never even turned into a conversation. I just said, Bret doesn't believe the church is true. It was just kind of a shutdown. And that kind of hurt me. She's kind of opened up a little bit more in recent days and recent weeks, I guess, and months. But I think I told her it was probably 2017 or so. So it was several months after he had told me, but I was just sick of keeping it to myself.
Yeah.
Plus, Bret started talking about not going to church. So I was like, well, at some point they're going to have to know.
They're going to figure it out.
And so, but I think she had to go through her own grieving process. And I think that's something that, and once again, as going through a faith crisis and in a mixed faith marriage, you have to understand that your family, you have gone through the grieving process and may still be in a grieving process, but your parents and your siblings and your friends and those people that really care about you, they may lash out. Like I lashed out at Bret. I love him more than anything else, but I lashed out. Now, we didn't have any lash out experiences like that from any other family members, but silent treatment did happen. Especially in regards to church things and stuff like that. I think you kind of feel like if someone tells you something like, oh, you know, he doesn't believe in the church, you instantly think you can't talk about it when you're around them, which may have been the case back then. Maybe we wouldn't want to talk about it. But now we're like, yeah, let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, back then it was really difficult for me to kind of be shut down by my mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. I love her to death. She's a great Nana and a great member of the church and a great mother figure, but that was really hard for me to tell her and then kind of be shut down, because remember I'd been talking to my mom, and my mom wasn't as shut down. She was actually pretty open to hearing everything that we were going through, why she was really curious as to why Bret was thinking this way, and so we really got to delve into some of those things. And Bret's mom actually gave me Reasons for Faith, A Reason for Faith. I don't know if you've read that book.
By Brian Hales' wife?
Yeah, the wife.
I can't remember her.
Yeah.
Laura.
Yeah. So that was actually part of the arguments that we would have. I would open up to a chapter and I would say, let's talk about this. Oh man, that was not a good idea. Because we were just because I was like firm in what I would read that book. I would read the chapter about polygamy or First Visions or anything like that. I would read a chapter and I'd be firm in what I believed, and then I'd take it to him and he would just like shut it down, and he'd be like, no, that's actually not the full story here. And so it was just a battle after battle after battle. So there would be times where we just wouldn't talk about it, like Bret said, and then there'd be a time where we would sit down, usually on a Sunday night at like 11 o'clock at night, when he had to wake up at 6 o'clock, and the conversation would go until like 2 o'clock in the morning. If I have any advice for you mixed faithers out there, do not have a serious conversation, pillow talk about church history. Just don't have pillow talk about church history, especially in the beginning, because you go to bed on a sour note, you wake up on a sour note, especially if it's on a Sunday night. Just don't do it, because you're going to go into the week just feeling like crap. And so that was one thing that we had to learn pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Bret, when did you stop church attendance, or are you still going?
Well, okay. So
January.
Yeah, it would be January this year. I guess, Alan, you're trying to attend every week right now, which I think that you're further along in the faith development process to where you can attend church again and you don't feel probably the same pain that you felt initially. Oh, really?
I'm literally shaking my head.
Yeah. We would refer the listener to the Back to Church episodes, but I don't know that you're right about that. It was very difficult. I am still going. We've decided right now where we're at, and then we'll go back to you, Bret. But that right now where we're at, I am doing. The family. Let me start over. Sorry, been a long day. Where we're at now is we've decided whatever we do on Sunday, we're going to do it as a family. And that may not work in the long term, but for now it's okay. And so I am going to the first hour, and then I'm heading out after that. But I don't know how sustainable that's going to be. We'll see. Back to you, Bret.
So you stop going in January.
Yeah, for all those that are going through faith transitions, faith crisis, it's kind of good therapeutic to hear that you're not alone on this. So yeah, church meetings. For a while, I had two church callings when we first moved into our current ward.
Financial clerk.
Yeah, I was financial clerk.
Dealing with the tithing.
My dad being bishop, he called me as financial clerk, and then he also called me as priest. Is a priest. I would teach the priest quorum, whichever that is.
Priest advisor.
Yeah.
Advisor. Yeah, so I was priest quorum advisor, and I teach them. And I was still in college at the time in late 2016 early 2016.
17 probably.
Yeah.
Oh no,
No, it was 2016.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
It's been a long day.
But yeah, at some point I felt like I couldn't prepare these lessons. I would read through the curriculum, the manual, and I would be like, I can't. It's difficult for me to pick and choose which principles I want to teach, and it's becoming even more difficult because like I felt like I didn't have a safe place at my house to bring up those concerns and, have some dialogue some interchange as to, how am I going to teach these lessons? Anyway, long and short of it, I felt like I couldn't teach these priests and feel authentic in it. So I asked my dad, I had to call him in and do the whole formal meeting in the bishop's office and sit down and say, I need to be released from this calling, which I could tell was difficult. And he kind of even choked up when he read that at the pulpit. I don't know if you remember that. But yeah, when he released me up at the pulpit, I could tell he was a little choked up from that.
I was just blind because I didn't realize.
At the time, this was our silent era. So it was...
no, like when you were first called. So I remember taking a picture and posting it on Instagram and talking about how, like I was pregnant with Buddy, so our first, and how awesome of an example you were going to be. You were sitting in sacrament meeting, reading your scriptures, preparing your lesson to teach to the teenagers. And I was just so proud of you for doing that. And now that I hear this too, I'm like, man, okay. I mean, I was just
this was the internal battle that I was having. But
and I did.
Back.
I mean, there's a hint of me that feels fooled. Like I was fooled. I didn't know anything before we got married. I spilled everything, every little sin that I ever committed as a debaucherous teenager. Anything you can think of, I told Bret before we got married. And this big, huge thing, he never told me. So, yeah, I mean, that's...
Well, I do have to say, when we got married, I wasn't non-believing. I was at the beginning of a faith crisis, I would say. It's a progression for me. It wasn't like a day I believed and the next day I didn't. It was a progression. So it's just, and one thought I had when we were dating, and one of the reasons why I thought that she could be my wife was I knew she was going to be strong in the church, and I knew that I was beginning to waver, and I was like, she's going to keep me in line in the church.
You need to do better, right?
Yeah. So
communication.
I was deliberately making actions knowing that, I had something going on, but I'm a Mormon. I believe this. I've served a 2-year mission. This is my church, and this is how I'm going to live my life. And those were the decisions I were making. And it was a progression. So before we got married, I was fully believing. I just had some questions. After we got married, it just progressed further and further until at one point I couldn't sustain it anymore, and I couldn't keep these callings.
One huge benefit of the faith crisis has been communication. I actually almost broke up with Bret while we were dating because he wouldn't talk to me. I wanted him to flip and talk to me, and he just wouldn't talk to me. So I'm a talker, obviously, and so I want to be talked to as well, and it just never happened. I had a really good friend convince me otherwise and to keep dating him. I'm glad she did that, but it was our first 4-5 years of marriage, and we're only on we'll be 6 years in December. So I mean, it was a long time before we really learned how to communicate, and we're still learning, but the faith crisis specifically has brought the gift of communication into our marriage. Like that's something that, we were good. We really get along really good together, but the communication was never really where it needed to be to really share everything that's going on and being a true partner in a marriage, Mm-hmm. And so that, if I could say anything, the faith crisis definitely brought the gift of communication into our marriage.
Yeah. Bret, how about you? What benefits have you seen in your marriage from where you are now?
You can't say communication. She took it.
Well, I was going to say something like that. Well, I think the ability to choose for myself, I guess we didn't get on the topic of, me deciding to stop attending.
Yeah.
So I can tie that into this.
Sure.
I stopped attending church basically at the beginning of this year, so beginning of 2019. And it was one of those where I told her beforehand, I have to do this for my mental health. Church was becoming too brutal for me, and it's just I needed to recover from it.
It didn't go over well.
And no, it didn't go well. And it was one of those where I just had to make a hard line stance and say, no, I'm not attending. And it was very painful for both of us, but I could tell for Rachel, it was taking a toll on her.
I was so mad.
With both boys, they're under 3 and under, and it's like they're rambunctious. Yes, my family's there, but my dad's bishop, so he's up on the stand. My mom, she's got my brother and sister with their kids, so it's all lost in these kids going nuts. Going absolute bonkers in sacrament meeting. Anyway, I could tell when she would get home from sacrament meeting, it was or from church, it was taking a toll on her.
And that led to my own crisis.
Church wasn't being uplifting to her, mm-hmm. And I noticed that too. Is over the course of a couple months where she'd just come back and she'd have a terrible attitude, and it's
my dad would come out again.
It's not, and I felt like I was partially to blame for that because I wasn't there to help her. But it was that thing of, what do I prioritize right now? Do I prioritize, my mental health, or do I prioritize Rachel's experience at church and possibly her mental health? Anyway, for that first little bit, I took a hardline stance, but recently I've been more fluid with church attendance. If I foresee that she's going to have a difficult week, like a lesson that she's going to teach or something that she needs to prepare for, I'll attend. I attended last week. So, and the purpose of me attending is to help with the boys.
Except he was on his phone half the time.
Well,
I can relate.
That was a failed attempt last week, but I'll be sure.
Perfect, right?
But one of the benefits I think that has come out of this faith crisis is the ability for me to make my own decisions and not feel like I'm jeopardizing our marriage over it. So mm-hmm. She's letting me do things that there's no way she would ever allow beforehand. So I'll drink alcohol occasionally. I attend church when I decide, and that's a big burden lifted off of me because it gives me the power to make my own decisions. And it's not like I'm trying to distance myself from the kids or the church or wife or anything like that. It's just I'm an adult and I'm able to make these decisions and not fear some sort of backlash from them.
Rachel, because Bret mentioned it, so I'm going to bring it up. How do you come to terms with the drinking?
Okay, so I knew what I was going to say. I knew what I was going to say. Okay, so Alan, you posted something when we first started the Facebook group. I remember Cameron was specifically talking to me back and forth on the post. I think you asked, you were going to have an alcohol post or an alcohol podcast episode, and it was just a chain. And I commented on it, and I was like, nope, I could never do it. Nope, not with my history. Nope, not going to do it. Never, 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 never. But one thing about me is I have a rebellious spirit. That's kind of who I am. And I can kind of tame it every now and then. But I've always kind of done what I've wanted to do. Like if I feel a certain way, I'm going to tell people. If I feel a certain way, I'm going to talk about it. If I want to do something, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. Bret, however, has always been one, okay, the church tells me I need to do this way, and this is how I'm going to do it. If this is the way that my parents tell me I have to do it this way, this is the way I'm going to do it. Me, I was complete opposite. I would say, no, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it my own way. And so Bret it's kind of weird that he had the faith crisis and not me. But one thing that as I've learned to nuance myself and nuance not just the belief in the church, but just my own way of living and thinking was, dude, just think for yourself. If you want to do something, just tell me, and just give me the courtesy to tell me before you do something, but just talk to me about it. If you want to do something, do it. If you want to go skydiving, do it. If you want to jump off a building, just make sure you have a parachute. Just tell me what you want to do. And so that kind of led, it's crazy. I think that post was back in February about the alcohol. And within a few weeks of that, I went to Costco and
she was the one pushing me to drink alcohol. So Alan, you're the one to blame on this.
It's all your fault. It's all your fault.
Cameron is the one to blame.
Oh, that's funny.
That's Alan's brother, by the way.
Cameron's the one to blame for me too.
It's all your fault. No, I think it just kind of was my own paradigm shift of accepting. Look, if I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do and not drink alcohol, if I can trust Bret that he's going to be responsible, if he's going to be an adult about it, and he's going, just like coffee drinking or shopping on Sunday, he's going to be responsible. I don't know how shopping on Sunday would be irresponsible, but anyway.
If you're shopping for
go over budget.
Yeah.
You could go to Costco, and we all know what happens at Costco. No, but it's just it's important to remember who your spouse is. It's important to remember that they deserve to be an adult just as much as you do. They deserve to make their own choices just as much as you do, even though those choices are not what you would want them to do. And I know sometimes that can lead to divorce. Sometimes these choices can lead someone down a really raw, really bad path. I can totally see how someone starting to drink alcohol, it can turn into something else. But you just have to trust your spouse. If you don't have trust in your marriage, what's your marriage? And if you can trust that they will be responsible, one thing that's worked for us is that he just tell me if he's going to drink, if he's going to, he hasn't gone out with friends or anything like that, but he's got, we're actually in our room right now. He's got a mini fridge on the bedside table. And so that's his bedside table, is the mini fridge. But so it used to be filled with Blenheim's ginger ale. Now it's got some other drinks in there. But no, I think the biggest thing is to just respect your spouse. And when I say respect, just respect their choices. And if it leads them down a wrong path, at least you're confident and comfortable in yourself to know that you allowed them to be free just as they're allowing you to be free. If you want to be able to live a life in the church and maybe even bring your kids along with you, you need to have an open line of communication and trust your spouse along the way. And that goes with alcohol, that goes with garments, that goes with church attendance, that's everything. And it's hard. And I've tried to get it across to him, just because I have a bad Sunday at church because you're not there. It's not because you're not there that I had a bad Sunday. I don't like going to church without him. I don't like, I'm kind of starting to lean where y'all are. Like if we're going to do something on Sunday, we're going to do it as a family. Mm-hmm. And, we do a lot of Disney trips and they just happen to be over the weekend. That kind of led into my own, this whole existential crisis, maybe even faith crisis for me. Like I just got to the point where I literally crumbled in the hallways of the church. I dropped everything one Sunday. This was a few months ago. I dropped everything on the floor. I thought someone would come and help me. Nobody, families would just walk by me. And I was just done. I was like, I don't even know if I want to live anymore. This is just stupid. I don't want to live like this anymore. And finally, a guy that you wouldn't expect, he looked like a biker. He's got a long braid, and he comes up and he helps me pick everything up, and he walks me to the car. Just as I was about to just lay on the floor and just say, Lord, take me, this guy walks up and helps me with all of my stuff, walks me to the car. It was just, that was a really cool experience, but that was kind of the start of my own kind of, where do I fit within the church now that we don't fit the mold. We don't fit the mold anymore.
Yeah.
We don't fit the mold anymore. And we know there's going to be whispers, and we know there's going to be talks. Just a few weeks ago, we came out on Facebook. We posted our Facebook post, and that was huge. And we had a lot of good reaction from it. But you can always tell at church, the people that saw it, the people that read it, I guess I've gotten more sympathy than anything. And I don't really want sympathy, but that's kind of what I've gotten. But more with my crisis that I had, I just didn't know where I fit in anymore. Like, for one, okay, a lot of stuff happened all at once. So I was teaching a certain primary class. They switched the primary class on me. And that class was like crucial for me during Bret's crisis. Like, I needed that class. It was the 7-8-year-olds, so they were a little more mature, and they were preparing for baptism. Then I had them after baptism, and it was just so great to have. And I got that taken away from me. Then our ward boundaries changed, and even like I've talked to like 3 people at church, and all of those people went to the other ward. Bret's dad got released as bishop. It was just so much happening all at once, and I was like, we just need annual passes to Disney World and just get away. So that's what I did.
So, Rachel, can I ask you a question? I'm imagining a more Orthodox believing spouse who is listening to this podcast and saying, I don't want to introduce any nuance to my belief. Like, I don't want, I see Katie as a little more nuanced. I see Rachel as expressing that her beliefs have changed. I love my beliefs. So could you talk to that person, the person that's at the beginning of this, looking at their spouse saying, I don't know if we should do this?
I've said it a few times. Our stake president is kind of like a second dad to me. And a few months after Bret went and talked to him, my temple recommend was up for renewal, so I needed to talk to him anyway. And he asked me, he said, what are you going to do? I didn't know what he meant by the question. I didn't ask him what he meant, but I quickly responded, well, I'm going to stay. Like, I had no idea if that's what he meant, like, by the question. But that question really stuck with me. I didn't know what mixed faith marriage was at the time. I didn't know that phrase. And so I'm a Googler, I'm a researcher. I like to find things out. So I couldn't find that phrase, mixed faith marriage. I found faith crisis. I found all these things, but I could not find mixed faith marriage. But one thing I did find, I found this blog or something, and she had ended up leaving. Her husband left the church, and she ended up leaving. But one thing she did say was, you have to decide today whether you're going to stay and leave. So in the beginning, that's the first question you ask yourself as the believing spouse. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Things are going to change. Things are going to change. You're going to have to accept change. And one thing we know as members of the church is change is really hard for us. When we move to 2 hours, when we have missionaries go out at younger ages, they're good things, but the first interaction with that, or the first reaction to that, is to push back and say, I just don't like it. I don't like it. And we murmur and we rumor and we all this stuff about a change. But you're sitting in the beginning of this, and you have to look in the mirror. I had to look in the mirror a lot. You have to look in the mirror and say, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay? Or are you going to leave? If you decide to stay, find the tools you need to stay. If you're going to leave, find the tools you need to leave. I know that there are some mixed faith marriages out there that don't work and that are toxic. There's other things going on in the marriage, and I totally accept that. But I didn't want that for us. We're not toxic. We're really great with each other. We get along great. We're friends. We were friends first. And even though it was only 3 months, you have to boil it back down to the basics. And I love going through the traditional marriage vows, for better or worse, for sickness and in health. Go through those in your head and see if it works for you. And if it works for you, like I said, find the tools you need to stay. And my nuance started when, honestly, I think the crux of it started with President Nelson's most recent talk about the eternities. And I'm getting emotional. That really, really crushed. I mean, I'd already come up with like this view of eternity with Bret still by my side. And then this talk comes out, and it's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. We're going to still hear things at church. We're going to still hear things in conference, and we're going to still hear these things. And change is still going to happen in the church, and change is still going to happen in your marriage. And so when that talk happened, that really hurt. It really hurt because I had already come up with this determination of how eternity was going to be for us, and then I kind of get shut down. And I don't like getting shut down. I like knowing what I'm going to know, and I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And if nobody believes me, well, I'm still going to believe it. And don't shut me down. Just keep your opinions to yourself. No, I'm just kidding. No, but, to the person that's in the beginning of this, and I'm actually a member of the Believing Spouses group on Facebook, and I've kind of realized that I don't necessarily fit in too good, but it does give me some insight into that Orthodox believer that stays the Orthodox believer, because there are many mixed faith marriages out there that the Orthodox believer stays pretty Orthodox. I don't get it. We even have a friend at church that they're in that same situation and they just don't talk about religion. And that there are so many different solutions. And if the toolbox that you need says that you're going to stay in a full believing way and you're just going to respect your spouse for what they believe, then go for it. If that's in your toolbox, find ways to support that. Find ways that makes it work for you and your spouse. But for us, I don't know. I once again, I have a rebellious spirit, so I'm sticking up for Bret a lot. And so when I saw that post on the LDS mom group about why people leave, I kind of felt the need to go in and explain what a faith crisis was and all this stuff. The comments got turned off right after I posted our Facebook coming out post, and I put the whole thing on that post. And I think I got a few private messages on it too. So I think it definitely touched some people that maybe didn't know about what a faith crisis was. And turns out the person who posted it, her husband is kind of starting to question as well. And so it was kind of like you're sitting here attacking her husband, who may be her husband, someone who may be her husband later, and it's causing. I'm sure she was super emotional after seeing all the comments and negativity on the post. But that's why I reached out and I said, friend request me and message me and let's just feel it out, along the way. And so, I think the biggest thing for the Orthodox believer is just find a toolbox that works for you. My toolbox is not your toolbox. Katie and Alan, y'all's toolbox may not be the same as Bret and I's toolbox. But you have to find ways, whether it's counseling, podcasts, music, whatever it is, find ways that can help you bond as a couple. And if you want to stay in your beliefs, but respect your husband for the beliefs that he has as well.
That's good. Or wife, if the wife is
or wife, yeah, or wife.
I know we're both in the same situation, so it's easy to say that. Katie had were you leading in to say something? No, you weren't.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think that's a really mature way to put it, because people ask me all the time, oh, are you gonna stay in? You're gonna stay out? Well, I mean, you just have to be flexible, and whatever you decide to do with your spouse. So I like the idea of having your own toolbox. Bret, do you have anything else that you would like to say that's been on your mind that you'd like to tell the listeners?
Well, Rachel kind of touched on it earlier, but as from the perspective of the one going through the faith crisis, you have to communicate with your spouse. I really dropped the ball on that one, and my story isn't exactly the best example of having that correct line of communication with your spouse. So, bottling it up inside, doing the research, thinking, oh, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm just going to move on. Go ahead and start it from the get-go. If you're starting to have doubts, if you're starting to have, it may just be questions at the time. Talk to your spouse about what you're learning. It may be difficult at the beginning. I know when we first started actually having this open line of communication, it was physically difficult for me anyway, to talk to her about it. And she was the one coming up to me.
I was excited.
She was the one coming up to me saying, hey, I want to talk about John Dehlin. And I'm like, I never thought that those words would ever come out of your mouth.
Right.
How can I talk to you about this when I thought that I had to keep, this whole podcast thing secret? Anyway, it's good. I think it's crucial for you to go ahead and open up that line of communication. I think that I hear that on practically any mixed faith marriage group, any podcasts on that. Opening up that communication, it is crucial. It relieves a lot of stress. Maybe at the time, it'll be difficult. Like I said, our first little bit was difficult. Oh, and when you go into it, don't go into it thinking I'm going to convince my spouse of one way or another. No, it's trying to create a channel of communication, not a channel of debate.
Yeah.
Going over, pulling the wool over someone's eyes, nothing like that. Just having this open communication where you can be authentic.
Avoid the words cult and guided and corrupt. Well, avoid those words. No, but one tip for the person doubting: it's okay to be scared. It really is. It's okay to be scared before you go to your spouse. It's okay. But one thing you got to try to get out of your head is that don't prescribe how they're going to feel. Bret held my first reaction where I stormed out of the house. He held that against me for years. And it took him a long time to gain that trust back to where he wasn't prescribing how I was feeling. And we're both still working on it. But try not to prescribe how your spouse is going to feel or react when someone said, I was watching, I think it was a Disney movie or something, but someone said, you can't affect how someone reacts to what you say. But if it's truthful and it's from your heart, that you can go to bed at night feeling at least a little bit more confident that you spoke from the heart. Your spouse may have stormed out of the house and yelled at you and threw stuff, but just remember that that's not always how they're going to stay. And we have to allow people reaction. So you as the non-believer or the doubter, you don't want your spouse to have, actually, as the believer, if your spouse tells you something, you want to tell your spouse something about church. Let's say that if you want to tell your spouse about a spiritual experience you had at church or at the temple or something, you don't want them to throw a chair at you. You don't want them to get mad because you're sharing this. So let's let your spouse be open with how they feel, at least. Maybe not going into topics about church history and things like that right off the bat, but just let them be open. Let them be a safe space. I wasn't that safe space for Bret for a long, long time.
Yeah. Give it time. One piece of feedback we got from our last episode, which was a musical episode, was a comment that I made on it gets better and things do get easier. Allow yourself, the emotions kind of die down. You can get into other topics later. You can try certain things, and if it doesn't work, wait some time and try it again. That's a really important thing to learn. So thank you for mentioning that. And Bret and Rachel, thanks for coming on Marriage in a Tightrope. Hopefully it went how you hoped it would go.
I feel like it was pretty disorganized.
That is exactly how it should be. Well, thank you very much again for joining, and thank you all for listening to Marriage in a Tightrope. if you would like to reach out to us, if you have any comments, we'll forward them on to Bret and Rachel as well. You can email us at marriageandatightrope@gmail.com. Join our Facebook group if you're on Facebook by the same title, Marriage and a Tightrope. And Katie runs our Instagram account, so you can message us on Instagram or follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's all good times. All right. Thanks so much again, and we will see you next time on Marriage and a Tightrope.